going on, everyone? How are you doing? I hope you're doing good, because it is good to feel good. And I have been having quite an interesting few days, I have. So let's just say the best way to describe it is that I live rent-free now in my local MP's head for basically doing a little peaceful protest that, you know, a gesture of which could be seen as provocative, you know, the middle finger, and he's not reacted well to it, let's just be honest. So let's discuss that, because that's what I'm here to do today. This is basically my little response to my MP, Simon Clarke. So let's go into this. So back a few years ago, the Equalities and Human Rights Commission concluded an investigation into the Labour Party that there was, you know, failure to tackle allegations and complaints about anti-Semitism within the party, and as a result there were measures in place to make sure that the Labour Party was going to put these measures in place and all sorts. Now, off the back of this, Jeremy Corbyn was suspended from the party and also had the parliamentary whip removed from the Labour Party in the House of Commons. Since then, he was reinstated into the Labour Party as a member, but not as a Labour MP. And also a few weeks ago, the EHRC announced that, you know, the measures had been met by the Labour Party and they were satisfied with what they have done in the last few years, so that they've now removed the sanctions against the Labour Party for what's happened, and there are now the necessary measures and protocols in place for a complaints procedure to be made in case of anti-Semitism. Now, also Keir Starmer announced in a speech the other day that the Labour Party is moving forward and it's not going back to the way things were in 2019. And he even said a few things, including if you don't like the way things are going, you can leave, quite frankly. And also that Jeremy Corbyn would not stand as a Labour candidate in Islington North at the next general election. And then, of course, in response to all that, I'm sure you may have seen Prime Minister's questions in the last few months or so, especially when Rishi Sunak has been Prime Minister, where most weeks without fail there will be at least one point where Rishi Sunak is responding to Keir Starmer and like using the Jeremy Corbyn card, saying he supported Jeremy Corbyn to be Prime Minister a few years ago, and being like, well, that was a few years ago. That's now irrelevant that he's, you know, whether or not Corbyn's in the party anymore, or whether or not he's leader anymore. You know, the Labour Party's moved on since then. And it's just funny to think how Jeremy Corbyn still lives rent-free in a lot of Tories' heads. And I feel like it's quite a bit of pot kettle black that, you know, they're saying he supported this guy. Well, at the same time, Tories, there have been 3 different Prime Ministers in the last 6 months. You have Boris Johnson, you know, who ended his time as Prime Minister in September. Then you had the very short-lived time of Liz Truss as Prime Minister, and then, of course, Rishi Sunak has been Prime Minister since the end of October. So, yeah, and also, I distinctly remember there was a lot of Tory MPs, especially after Liz Truss resigned, saying, oh, I'm going to support Boris Johnson to be the leader of the Conservative Party next, and like even one of those people just so happened to be Simon Clarke. Then when Boris Johnson pulled out, it was said like, oh no, I support Rishi Sunak to be leader, and it's just like, we don't have short memories, we all remember what happened, we all know who you wanted to have as leader again, and it's just, it's so silly. So going back to this, Simon Clarke tweeted a video of Keir Starmer when he previously supported Jeremy Corbyn when the latter was leader of the Labour Party. Now, of course, as I say, Corbyn's no longer leader of the Labour Party, nor is he a Labour MP, so, yeah, again, irrelevant. So, my little response to Simon Clarke was, Simon, mate, you supported a lawbreaker as Prime Minister, i.e. Boris Johnson. You supported a Prime Minister who crashed the economy, i.e. Liz Truss. And now you're desperately supporting a Prime Minister who's out of ideas and has nothing to offer to this country, i.e. Rishi Sunak. As my local MP, I think it's time for you to call it a day. And you know what? That's a perfectly decent response. You know, sure, the picture of me giving the finger to his constituency office is a bit provocative. You can view that however you want to. But you know what? You could have just acknowledged it, you know, left it there. But no! You had to respond, didn't you? You responded to me, Simon, didn't you? You said, typical of the kinder, gentler politics of the left. Walking down the street swearing my hard-working office team must make you feel hugely proud, Ollie. For what it's worth, attempts to intimidate me just make me more determined to stop Labour taking Teessides backwards. And to be completely honest, I didn't know the Tories were taking Teesside forwards. How would you ever know that? This is the thing, Simon. You're accusing me of intimidating or even threatening you or your staff. Need I remind you, all I've simply done is I've given the middle finger to a building, your constituency office, an inanimate object, so that's just how silly this sounds. That's like giving the middle finger to, say, a statue or a billboard or even somebody on TV, and it, like, you know, just you could have just left it there, but you chose to respond to me, and now I'm giving my response to you. And it's the fact that you think I would go out of my way to threaten or intimidate, you or your staff, which, for the record, I would never do that. It's not in my character to do that. And I'm aware of people who have gone out of their way to intimidate, their local MPs, whether they be Labour or Conservative or even any other party. And I don't agree with that, Everyone's got their right to protest, but I would never go out of my way to, physically or verbally intimidate or threaten someone. And of course there are examples of like 2 MPs, Joe Cox and David Ames, who were sadly killed because of threatening and intimidating behaviour, and sadly the loss of their own lives in these kind of matters. So that is something I would never resort to, for the record. But just going back to this whole thing where this whole thing has been taken out of context, simply saying like, oh, it's not okay, Ollie, for you to go out and give the middle finger to someone's constituency office, and like you being like, oh no, I'm really offended by that, ooh. But need I remind you that Andrea Jenkins, a Conservative MP for Morley and Outwood, last year in July, when just before Boris Johnson resigned, gave the middle finger to peaceful protesters outside Downing Street and faced no repercussions for it. So, great double standards, am I right? I think the funny thing about all of this is the fact that there's been a very mixed response to this. So, there have been a lot of people who have been very praiseworthy of me, which I'm very thank you for the praise, but then of course, there are some people who haven't reacted too positively. So, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. In the vein of celebrities reading mean tweets, I'm going to read some of the responses that I received from the people in favour of Simon Clarke. Embarrassing. Ooh, you're hard. Bore off. Grow up. Grow up. Shit, man. Wouldn't want to mess with you. Oh. You appear to have misspelled your surname. Actually, I think you'll find that my surname is in fact Walker. It's on my birth certificate and it's on my passport, so just letting you know that. The tolerant left. Keep up the great work. People like you are helping the Tories. I don't think we are, to be honest. Bow, edgy of you. Ooh, sausage. Tough guy. Whoa. I will say, actually, that I have actually been going back to the gym recently, and, I've started up there again, and that's going really well, so thank you. I'm still on the fence whether to vote Tories again in the next general election, but when I see people on the left doing stuff like this, it just draws me closer to voting Conservatives more, just to stop these raving left loonies from getting in. So cheers, Ollie. Well, I'll tell you what would help you better than that is if you just got off the fence. I'm sorry that I've caused you a bit of offence by doing this as well. What an absolute pathetic fanny. How childish. This is just childish. Ollie, you're a pillock. We know you have a problem, but try you can't be a pillock all your life, like you not being able to spell all your life. Ollie, you're clearly an uneducated moron who believes anything the Labour bullshit media tells you. And then also, while we're on the topic, all of this got me featured in an article in the Northern Echo of all things, and just like, this just shows how everything has been taken out of context with this, and just how things have been blown completely out of proportion. So, here's the article. Simon Clarke MP gets into bizarre middle finger Twitter spat. Conservative politician Simon Clarke MP divided the social media platform on Thursday after hitting back at a Twitter troll after a picture was shared of someone's middle finger being stuck up to his northeast office. And yeah, I made it into the Northern Echo. I'm basically a local celebrity, so that's pretty good. But then also there are some comments on there that I thought I would read one that really just sticks out to me. So just need a quick swig of water before I do, because this is just, I'm going to read it in a voice, and it's brilliant, it is. I could not have said it better myself, Simon. Hideous bullying from the so-called compassionate left. Us Tories have been silenced long enough by the man on the street and his finger terrorism. It's time to fight back. We will not be intimidated by this highly provocative act. Let me just digest a few things of that. Finger terrorism, bang bang. Finger terrorism, what a thing. I've never heard of such a thing. Absolute nonsense, and it just shows how there are some really delusional people out there. You will believe anything the Tories tell them, you know, because that's the thing with the Tories. They like to gaslight people, and you know, Simon has gone out of his way to gaslight people into believing that I threatened him, you know, I was intimidating towards his staff, and you know, what I've done is, you know, abusive and all sorts, and like, you know, finger terrorism as this comment says, and it's just been blown out of proportion. It really has. It's like, again, it's just everything's been taken out of context from what I originally said, and he's trying to present himself in a positive light to try and, you know, defame me and, you know, paint me to be the bad guy. He's making himself look like the victim at the end of the day, and it's just funny. Like, it's always with the Tories, it's always everyone else's fault but theirs, and it's typical. And, you know, after 13 years of them being in power, I think it's just time they called it a day. You know, as much as I would love to see an early general election, I do think it's going to be some time before we do see one. But I am looking forward to seeing what goes down. And funnily enough, as things stand, Simon Clarke is predicted to lose his seat at the next general election, as things stand. And, you know, the opinion polls very much speak for themselves, and I am really looking forward to seeing the Tories getting voted out at the next general election. But, yeah, I mean, that is the consensus of how things are going, and I'm sure things will continue until the general election, so bring it on. And yeah, that's where I'm going to leave it, you know. I'm going to be the bigger man and say that, you know, I don't think it was right that, you know, I did that. You know, as I say, I've got many forms of, like, protesting in this country, you know. I could have voiced it differently, you know. I could have, you know, said something loud and proud in front of your office. I could have held placards up if I wanted to. I gave the middle finger, fair enough. You maybe see it as provocative, but at the same time, you know, it's funny when I can't, it's not okay for me to do it, but, you know, one of your parliamentary colleagues can do it without repercussions. So it's either all okay or it's not okay, Simon. But yeah, thank you for giving me the good time to respond, and I hope you have a lovely day, Simon, and also hope you're keeping up the good work for our constituents as well, and I can't wait to see you lose your seat at the next general election. But anyway, I'll have the last laugh on that. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you all have a lovely day, and I'll leave you with some advice, and that is always to enjoy yourself, stay safe, and make the most of every opportunity that comes your way. Thank you for watching, and peace.